order. You should have received the meeting agenda a couple weeks ago, including the subject material we're going to go over today, and also the old meeting minutes, which some of you may not have been part of, but we're going to go through those today. If there's no objections, can I get an approval for the approval of the agenda for today?
Scott will make a motion.
Foster will second it.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That's good. We'll go to the approval of the minutes. This was the meeting that was taking place back in June 28th of 21. Like I said, many of you were around at that time, others aren't, but if you haven't reviewed it, go ahead and look at it. If not, I can get a motion to accept the meeting minutes on that date.
I'll make a motion. Foster.
Nigel, I can second it.
Okay, I think, Chief Kent, I think you were not part of it during that time. If you're uncomfortable, you can recuse, or if you want, we can just vote without you.
Yeah, I don't think I was even appointed to post board, so probably shouldn't vote, just abstain from voting.
Okay, sounds good. So we got the three of us, so you guys, we got, if I can get a first and second, we got, right? And then all in favor, say aye. Aye. Good to me. We will move on to the next action item, which is the Public Assembly and First Amendment model policy. This one's a lengthy one. I hope you guys got a chance to review it. I did, and let's go ahead and have Alicia describe about the changes and some of the concerns and questions and answer if we have any.
All right, so just to start with this policy and all the others, I know at the last board meeting, board asked for hyperlinks. So after today, after we have a final draft, if you guys wish to pass them on to the board, I'll take care of all the hyperlinks then. So I just wanted to get ahead of that and say I will make sure that that's taken care of. So for the Public Assembly and First Amendment activity model policy, this one is not mandated by the legislature. So this one and its requirement for agencies to have it is in rule. So with this one, the biggest thing to start with was it was reorganized and put in the same format as all the other model policies that the board has now already approved. And then with this one, due to the complexity, it was outsourced and sent to the State Patrol. We had an instructor with the State Patrol on file at Salesforce that teaches Public Assembly and First Amendment courses. And that would be Captain Jason Engeldinger. So I spoke with him, sent it to him. He had himself and his people look at it, and then he also outsourced it to other individuals he knows that instructs on the same First Amendment, public crowd assembly topics. So I got feedback from Jason and then Captain Craig Grayling, I believe is how you say his last name, from Hopkins PD. The feedback was really good. They more so wanted to make sure that the model policy wasn't duplicative. There was a lot of different themes that would repeat itself, but maybe say it a little bit different, which then added to some confusion as to what maybe was or was not prohibited or what things are encouraged or aren't. They wanted more so language. In some instances, it was very specific and possibly contradictory to what is trained and how law enforcement are trained to handle equipment. So there was verbiage changed, like if it was specific, it was changed to will use, let's say, less lethal as described and trained per the department's policy, similar like language. And then information was pulled a little bit from State Patrol's Public Assembly and Use of Force policy, because they just kind of went above and beyond what was in our policy and just gave some really good guidance. So some of that is in the edited copy as well as being added. And then the arrest and handcuff sections were removed, just to again cut down on duplicative information, and those things are covered in the board's learning objectives for continuing education quite extensively. So just trying to cut down the information more to what is specifically needed for crowd management and public assembly activity.
can open it for question and answer. So just, if I can first ask, so because this is not a model policy designated by state legislation, it can be adopted based on the rules that we generate?
So kind of, so because there isn't any legislative mandate that the board has this, there's nothing that we have to necessarily check off from the legislative standpoint that has to be included in here. So its content then is completely up to the board's discretion as to what they do or do not want included in it. And then because it's not legislative, like the requirement that agencies have this model policy isn't legislative, it's because of the board's rule, which has the effect of law. So that's where this one comes into play, is I think it was like after 2020, I believe it was added as a required model policy. And then that's when it was adopted and agencies were expected to have it per rule, not necessarily statute.
Okay. Gotcha. So about going deviation from our model policy here, how does it work for agencies to deviate from some of the languages, as compared to the other model policy where it's a little bit more restrictive because it's legislatively driven?
Not necessarily. So agencies are still required then to have the same or similar model policy of this one that the board puts out. It's more so the legislature just isn't directing the post board at this time as to what needs to be included in here. So more so the board has the creative liberties to include or disinclude what they think is important or that they think agencies need guidance on in this model policy.
That's good clarity for me. Committee members, any questions or answer regarding the revision?
Just a thought, nothing for direction. Really a little bit concerned about our small rural agencies. Having to adopt this and put it into play in practice as a mandated policy when it's not necessarily going to really affect them. We're talking 1, 2, 3 person departments. I get it. This is useful for us, but I don't know that it's, I'm just kind of word vomiting a bunch of stuff without any direction. So just kind of making that clear that I understand it. I get it. Might be a little bit burdensome is all. Nothing specific as the Alicia, to your point, nothing specific, but just kind of a general concern.
Yes, thanks, Kent, for bringing that up. That was why I kind of brought that up to see how does that affect smaller agency, especially the big agencies. No doubt they can accomplish and establish this with the kind of the thought process of how this all encompassed around a public assembly, but the small agency, I can see that there might be some confusion on how to properly administer this. That's just my thought.
Which is a good point, and Jason with State Patrol brought that up as well. So to try to, again, it's not perfect when you talk from like the resources or the manpower perspective, but there were incidences where it talks about like a shift commander, and it was more in the old model policy, it was more formal with the structure of like the operations of command for a public assembly incident. And we did change it to make it a little bit more lax. So it kind of opens it up for like the shift supervisor. And if that ends up being a more senior officer, so it broadens it a little bit so that it's not as formal. And in that respect, from the command structure, it is better applicable to the smaller agencies. But yeah, noted. And if there's anything in there, Scott, that you think of that you would like us to alter or look into further, I can certainly do that.
Yeah, to that point, even the shift supervisor, if you're looking at my friend that runs a 5-person department with Barnesville PD, there isn't necessarily a shift supervisor. It's just the chief. He does everything. Those are very burdensome jobs, but to pigeonhole some of that verbiage, it was structure and hierarchy. into those agencies. They just simply don't have it. So, but this is one of the hard ones to, it's going to apply made to more urbanized cities. There's a fly buzzing around. I'm at Arrowwood for a conference, so I'm trying to do too many things at one time. It's just, it's a hard policy to have across the state is all. But thank you for doing the work and trying to make sure that it fits for everybody.
I got another question, but Jen, go ahead. I saw you raise your hand.
I can't remember if this is the one where it's got, if it's this one or if it's, oh, it might be the public assembly. With the, press. Is that mentioned in this one? I know the press was like something about press credentials and stuff like that. Does that just mean if, yeah, so I'm just wondering how that works because you have people, I mean, especially when you have your so-called keyboard warriors that are out there. So if they have just something that says press, does that mean we just leave everybody, if anybody has something that says press on them, we leave them alone?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
So, and this was actually something that Craig brought up, and we did end up tweaking it a little bit, I think more so in the definition section. But essentially, you're not required to have an ID. In fact, some news outlet organizations don't issue staff IDs. So essentially, yes, the premise of the policy as it was before is you still need to take people at their word. But if, for example, with a cell phone and they're on Facebook Live or something like that, and it's evident and apparent, and you can articulate that this person is not of the actual media, then that person would still be subject to any orders of dispersal and things like that. Unfortunately, it is a gray area, and that's just a gray area that's to exist until, you know, maybe it would have to be legislative where all news media people would have to have credentials with them and present it when asked. But until we get to that point, it's a gray area that unless you guys have better ideas as to how you want me to tighten that up, we did what we could with it. So it's still pretty vague, pretty gray, but tried to do our best to tweak it.
no, and that's totally fine. I appreciate that. It's just one of those things where I was thinking about that, like of, you know, if people are out there and all of a sudden they're just, you know, yep, I'm with the press. Here's my press pass, which just says press on it that they printed up. Like, you know, how that rolls when you're in that volatile of a situation, you know, and trying to figure out how to articulate that I don't believe they're with the press, but then if they are, then what happens? And, you know, I mean, that just kind of goes down that rabbit hole. But I also, like I said, I was thinking the same thing when I was kind of reading through this, as the same as Scott and Jim were saying too, with the whole, like just smaller agencies, like I mean, there's no mandated training per se for this. This is just a policy that they have to review, or is that kind of what it is? Is that you just have to review this at some point in time if you're with the agency? Because again, training and stuff like that, I don't know how often those 5-man departments would get to some sort of training on this.
Correct. Yep, this would be one of those where it's a policy that's reviewed at onboarding. And then it would be up to the agency or the department then whether they want the policy to be reviewed yearly. The department could say that, but currently there's no requirement for that. So I believe it would be most commonly done at onboarding. You acknowledge you read it and then reference it as needed.
All right. Thanks.
Nigel, you have any thing to add or any question to clarify stuff for you? You're the public member, maybe some of the stuff here may not resonate.
No, I was just thinking to Jennifer's comment, like in the media thing, I do see there's like a specific line around like how you're going to try to tell media apart, like if they're interfering with like any activities. Like I think that's a pretty clear point. Like I'm not going to see someone with NBC News hopefully going up and saying like you can arrest this person. Like I think there is that level of like interference I think is clear to tell between someone who's what you call them, a keyboard warrior, Jennifer, and like actual media, or someone that's just doing Facebook Live. I think for me that feels pretty clear cut. Like I think about like especially major incidences. I feel like I've seen over the last year, like where you have someone reporting on the media, and you have a law enforcement officer shooting at someone that's reporting in media. Like I think that's pretty clear cut of like unallowable activity and like what this sets out. And then I know you said there's no training on these, but how, like, I feel like I should know this, but how do we implement these policies is like a broader question. Like, is it just we're emailing these policies out, read them, or is there something that we do on our, the front end of saying like a webinar or something? It's like, here's our policy changes that are happening, not necessarily going through like the like hands-on training with it, but to give people awareness that may be situated in agencies that are responsible for ensuring these policies are implemented. Is there something like that we do at all, Alicia, that you can respond to? Or Eric?
I can jump on it. So our standards coordinators ensure during their, evaluations that they do of agencies, that they have all the model policies that they're required to have in place and that they're substantially same or similar. And then we do have a plan, once all of the model policies are approved, we'll send out notices to the agency saying, hey, all of the model policies have been updated by the board. Make sure you take a look at them and that your current model policies now reflect the changes made by the board and that your policies are still the same or similar.
Sure.
Good question.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess my largest concern is like I know we're doing what we can do here, but at the end of the day, it's the matter of like the people on the ground that are interacting in these situations, and it feels like more and more we are seeing like protests happen. So how do we balance the line between public safety and the constitutional right to protest, without being in a situation where it's being exacerbated by either side, I guess is what I'm trying to say here, just because of what we're seeing in the media. And I don't know if there's anything else that we can do as a post board to kind of ensure people's clarity and education around this as well, but also I think taking into consideration too, like smaller agencies as well, as kind of Scott pointed out earlier, like how do we make sure everyone's doing their due diligence? I don't really have a question there, it's just a thought.
Ken, I'll come back to you. I think Eric had his hands up first. Go ahead, Eric.
I'm gonna bet that Scott's gonna say exactly what I was thinking, so go ahead, Scott.
I don't know that I would bet that. But to Nigel's point, this is really a hand in hand with your city attorneys and your city governing elected to make sure that that we in policing and the city has the same expectations of what's lawful and unlawful assemblies. And there's so many of them that are lawful assemblies that just need to be guided in the right direction. But it's not just a post board policy. It's also working in step with your city officials, your county officials also. Were we on the same page, Eric?
Yes, sir.
Scott, thanks for clarifying that. It's true. Yeah, usually your city attorney's office will work hand in hand with the agency to make sure that they're following the correct directives to make sure that nothing can be litigated at a later date. Anything else pertaining to this? Is there anything else that we want to kind of discuss, or if not, how does it look to?
So quick question, would you put something like that in there for some of those smaller agencies who may not know to do that, or agencies, or would all agencies know to work with their people?
That I think for direction to help support small agencies, small chiefs and police, I think that would be a Eric Miskew question. How does that get resonated to to like the Chiefs of Police Association, or, I mean, I think they have resources and stuff like that, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, this goes to the broader question that Nigel brought up and then Scott answered where, I mean, we're the post board at the end of the day. We don't run operations. Each local agency has their pluses and minuses. They have their resources. Some have more, some have less. I mean, at the end of the day, really the application of any of our policies really sits at that level. And our only jurisdiction, if you will, or force of law, if you will, or but nah, that's not even a good term, is to make sure that Clio adopts the policy and updates it and all that. But the application, it's not our role, nor do we have the capacity as a board to get down in the weeds on that. I mean, we can't even enforce policy violations on officers who violate a policy. That's for the chief or the sheriff to handle. And as far as the breadth of the policy and how it impacts smaller agencies, and there's again, policies or guidelines. There's some realities about what they can and can't do, and they'll do the best they can with it. I would say that given that this is not a statutorily required policy, if the committee has concerns about either the restrictiveness of it or the implication it holds for smaller agencies, and by all means, nothing says it has to be passed today. We could revisit it. You could have more work done on it. This came out in 2020, and we all know why it came out in 2020, but it is a post board rule, not a statute. So I guess if you think there are other things that can be clarified or can be more narrowly focused or broadened out, or some recognition of even a statement in there that says you do the best with the resources you have to when following this policy or something like that, you could easily do that and recommend that, and it would make sense. So it's entirely up to you. But again, policies are never, and I know I'm preaching to the choir for most of you on this. Policies are, they're guidelines, and we have a certain role to play, but then that's it. When the rubber meets the road, each agency implements it.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Is there any concerns, or are you, as a committee, are we comfortable with the language set forth? We are. I can get a motion to accept and vote, or if not, I think we can always table it. We can recommend Isha and her team to kind of look at certain languages that will make us feel a little bit more comfortable for smaller agency. However we want to do this before we present it to the big board.
I've got some minor concerns, but I think it's also at an acceptable level to move it forward, Jim. So I would make a motion to accept as presented today to move it forward to the larger board.
I got a motion to accept it. Can I get a second?
I can second.
Nigel. All right, with that, we got a first and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 I
So opposed, so the Public Assembly and First Amendment model policy accepted. Thank you for that. We will move forward to number 5, avoiding racial profiling model policy. Go ahead, Alicia, when you're ready.
So the avoiding racial profiling went through the content and made sure that it was still in line with statute, making sure that there was nothing past this last legislative or previous legislative sessions that would impact it. There were none, so it was mostly formatting and grammatical changes, just cleaning up grammar, making it more concise. And then because the changes were limited in scope to formatting and a general cleanup, No outside stakeholders were contacted because the substance is still same or similar to the previous model policy.
Thank you for the clarification. With that, let's open up for question and answer. There's no concern at all. I can get a motion.
I can make the motion.
Motion.
Kent will second. Kent will second.
All in favor, say aye.
I
Aye.
Motion accepted and approved. We go categories that and move to the next one. Thank you, everyone. Sexual assault investigation model policy. Go ahead, Michelle.
Jim, I'm gonna step aside for a few minutes. I'll be back. I have to go do an introduction at the beginning of this conference. But I'll be back in a few minutes.
Okay, sounds good. Very good. Thanks. Michelle, no, that dropped us.
You just won't be able to take action on it, but if he's gonna come back, if you want to open up discussion, we can.
So we can talk about it, but we just can't take action.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, we can go ahead.
So the sexual assault investigations, made sure to do a comprehensive review for any statutory changes. There were quite a few that, impacted, like oh my goodness, not the social worker, but the, on-call individuals, advocates. So like regarding confidential information with advocates and stuff like that. So did that, and then I sent it to Standpoint. Specifically Sammy Sexton with that organization, who's one of their attorneys. And she went through and gave some really good, solid changes and recommendations to this policy just to update it. I also sent it to the Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault on Ashley Taylor Gorge. And I never heard back from her. So unfortunately, we weren't able to get any of their feedback. I believe I gave her like a month and a half and didn't get anything back. So reached out to a couple other places and again, nobody sent anything back to me. So props to Sammy then for the help. She was super helpful. We actually went back and forth a number of times to try to get a good product that she felt comfortable with. So in this one, the definitions, again, just more organizational structure, everything put in alphabetical order in the definitions. Big thing with definitions is if there was a statutory reference, it was made the statutory reference to try to cut down on the amount of text. Again, I'll put in those hyperlinks. And then there was some information that more so like was on border of a standard operating procedure rather than a model policy. So then between Sammy and I, we just tweaked that stuff to make sure that it was still in the model policy domain rather than a standard operating procedure. To make sure that departments are getting flexibility in how they accomplish the tasks in the model policy. So, and then again, yeah, just the confidentiality between victims and advocates. Advocates, as of last legislative session, are no longer allowed to share information with law enforcement from a victim unless they have the victim's explicit permission. So.
Okay, with that, any questions? I have one if you guys,
I have one too. I was just looking at, so did the family or household members change? Cause I saw, I didn't know what this highlighted was where it says person involved and then it says previously involved was like in blue. I don't know. Did that change or was that just a typo color thing?
No, so the blue stuff is from Standpoint. So if I'm correct, if you see that it adds in previously involved, that's getting at that it can be, it doesn't have to be a current formal current romantic relationship, right? Previous romantic relationships, like if you guys have a child in common or if you dated for whatever amount of time or just had the physical relationship, that still counts as I'm getting my stuff mixed up. So family or household member has the same meaning given in. You know what, can you direct me to a page, Jen, because I'm getting my wires
Yeah,
crossed.
sorry, I apologize.
Okay.
It was in the actual, like, it's not listed in the other copy because of course, family or household member is striked out in the one copy and it just goes to has the same meaning as given to statute 518B01. This page is, I believe, 38 of 76. So I was just trying to figure out, like I said, because I was like, does that mean that previously involved people aren't considered family or household members anymore? I was just trying to make sure that if that's still included or if it's not.
No, so that would still be included because that's in statute. So
Okay.
what happened, the draft one that you're looking at is when Sammy and I were going back and forth. She had said we should add in or previously involved in a significant relationship. And I
Okay.
said, how about better? And we just switch it to the statute. That way if statute changes, gets more broad, we don't have to go back into here and change it. So sorry, that was part of the working process that you're
Nope, that's
seeing.
fine. I just wanted, it just looked different and I was like kind of concerned because I was like, well, wait a second, if they had a previous relationship, I thought that still counted for,
Yeah.
domestic. So I just wanted to make sure that was what that was doing. So thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And we got Stephanie on board, welcome. Since I think you just came in at our middle discussion here, we are at the sexual assault investigation model policy. If you want to kind of jump on this. We're just kind of going through the revision on the actual model policy, some of the changes that were made and the reason why. The question I have is I don't know if it's a new one or it was already previously on here. I'm trying to find it myself here, but it's the one where if an agency receives the incident and they respond, and it's just more or less my concern is to make sure that the officer or the agency isn't playing top of some actual document that has already been generated without any of the cross out session. I think it talks about it, but I don't know if that was something that was added on or was it always on there?
You have a page, Jim?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it here. It's the one where they find out that the agency, I mean, it did not happen in the agency, that the officer will assist the victim in facilitating the contact with the agency where the sexual assault took place.
Yes, so you're wanting to make sure that that's strong enough that officers and agencies aren't just dismissing.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I think
wanna
it's on page 40.
Okay.
So I think it's on the draft, it's gonna be page 2 of the draft, under responding to sexual assault call,
Yes.
first paragraph.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. And do you guys think that that's strong enough to make sure that agencies are not going to drop the ball on that?
Jim, have you experienced some problems with people dropping the ball on that in St. Paul there?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
But our agency
I know,
is.
I agree with that because
It
there's,
says, hey, just take the report regardless. We don't need to deal with it. We'll take the report and then we'll start the investigation. Later on, we can pass the buck later after the fact, but we can initially start the intake process. I just
Right.
want to make sure that agencies are not gonna get caught up in this.
I would agree with that because I know there's been times too where you start taking the initial report and then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, this happened in this city. And it was like, well, you're already halfway through the report. You take the report and you
Yeah.
forward it on.
Yeah, that's my concern is, I mean, obviously you're taking the report, you're talking about it, and then halfway through the story, he or she's giving you the crying element, and then you're like, oh, it happened over here. Oh, okay, sorry, it's not us anymore. I'm gonna have you call that agency and they'll come out and take it. I just think that in that way, it's just inappropriately in our profession to deal with that way. And I'm not sure if agency would need a better guideline on that to ensure that when those things happen, then you just kind of finalize it and then you can have those discussions later. with those other agencies. Ken, thanks for coming back. That's one of the ones I was gonna ask you, if you have seen anything like that in a smaller agency capacity.
Scott, you're muted.
I didn't hear the whole part of your concern, Jim, so if you could, restate what part.
Okay, no, I was just making sure that the model policy gives enough clarity on the intake process when officers are responding to a sexual assault. They're gathering the initial investigation, the preliminary, and then eventually leads to where they find out that maybe it didn't happen in our hearing, and now they cut it off going, hey, you gotta go and call this agency, see you, bye. And then they kind of leave the victim in that state. I just want to make sure that we have enough clarity in here to show that there is, of course, jurisdictional responsibility, but that if we're taking the report already and we're halfway there, we need to just report and we can deal with the jurisdictional stuff later instead of having the victim deal with that. I don't know if that's something.
No, I know what your concern is, Jim, and, from a policy development standpoint, unlike the first one we talked about, this one I think is, when we develop policy, it won't be any more restrictive than the model, or you can be more restrictive in your own agency. So if your own agency is looking for, specific, bullet points from getting from here to here, I think that's where, I think that's where you can develop a stronger policy agency wise.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm guessing you can change that from should take the report to shall. Like if you're in your agency at that point in time.
Yep.
Right? That's what you're saying, Scott, is that you can just kind of develop it to be a stronger, but it gives you the basics here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments on this model policy? Nigel or Stephanie? If not, if I can get a motion to approve the model policy as set forth for us for the sexual assault investigation.
I can make a motion to approve.
And I second.
First and second, all in favor, say aye.
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 So approved. Thank you for that. We'll move on to the next one. The school resource officer model policy.
Oh. So I just want to start with I know that this one was just done. This one came with, a lot of passion. And it is required by the legislature. So before we get into it, for anybody that ends up asking later or ends up reviewing the video later, this policy is substantially same or similar as to what it was when the working group developed it and made it. What the changes are is, the changes are those of grammar. So for example, SROs was plural in cases where it should have been possessive and vice versa. So cleaning up things like that, and sentence structure. There were instances in which the same idea was stated twice, but maybe in a little bit different way. So those things were consolidated and tried to make more clear, to reduce any confusion that might be had for reading the same thing in two different ways. And then definitions, if there was a statute number that it could be linked to, such as the prone restraint definition. The statute was mentioned in the model policy before, but I just made it straight, this is the number that you're referring to for this definition, because then if it changes, it doesn't require any action from the board. The model policy will just change then as statute changes. And then organization. So it looks a lot different because of the organization, but everything in here is substantially similar as to what the working group did. They spent a lot of time on this, so I wanted to make sure that as I was editing it and trying to get it ready for your consideration and approval, that it was substantially same or similar. So.
Any questions, concern, or discussion?
And again, those hyperlinks will go to all those things too. So I know you already said that, but I figured I'd just throw that out there again, because that's always a good thing to have, just when you're looking back at statute if you need to grab something, so.
When we look at, page 61, use of force, it's lined out with a bunch of red. Just a matter of clarification, reading through that, if that lined out is just more specific and detailed out those statutory numbers, is that what you did, Alicia?
Yeah, in that whole section, all the lined out information, I consolidated, and then that's what the red ended up becoming. Is just trying to make it more concise as to the point that was trying to be made. So I am open to, if I didn't quite hit the mark on that, and if this group has suggestions, I'm more than willing to tweak that. But that was my intent, is that the struck out information was just more concise in the red.
Okay, if there's no other questions or concerns, if I can get a motion to accept the school resource officer model policy as shown with the changes.
I can make a motion.
Kent will second.
Okay, first and second, all in favor, say aye.
I
Okay, looks like unanimously, thank you for that. School resource officer model policy has been approved and accepted. Go to the next topic, which is the use of force model policy. Right, Alicia, when you're ready.
So again, the use of force, this one was mostly cleanup and the format changes, grammatical changes, but this one also went to State Patrol, specifically Jason Engeldinger. And then we also got input with State Patrol from James Nymack and then Eric Barthel. Hope I'm saying those correctly, I'm probably not. So just cleaning up some of the text within here, ensuring that things aren't too restrictive in for law enforcement agencies, and that again, it's falling back on training as to how to use some stuff. That statutory references are being used as the definitions. That way, as they change, it doesn't require any action from the board. There were some definitions added in, such as less lethal force, objectively reasonable, and then totality of the circumstances. For this policy, I also looked at Kansas University. They have model policy examples that they post on their website as part of their law enforcement, criminal justice division at that university. So that's where I got that idea from and pulled the concept of adding those definitions in here just to make sure that they're explicit. And then we did actually just have some staff discussion. An agency brought up the topic with our standards coordinators about great bodily harm, we do have that listed in the model policy as a definition. And I guess I would agree with the agency that brought this up, but great bodily harm isn't ever used within the policy. So the recommendation then, since it's not a term that's used in the policy itself, that we just cut it from the definition section. And again, that definition would be great bodily harm, just cutting it. Still defined in statute, but because it's just not used in the model policy, there isn't necessarily a need to define it then in the model policy. So I'll defer that decision to this group.
Great, thank you. A lot of work went into this. I think the most really polished way it's received right now. Any questions, comments, or concern from the committee?
Yeah, comment from the committee. I can't help myself sometimes, Jim, so. My concerns are that I know we're updating and we're wanting to do the best we can with the policy. The burdensome piece is sending it back to our use of force instructors, having them review it, and the questioning of, is this going to be the last policy? What do we need to keep updating? What do we need to keep doing in our in-house trainings that may continue to cause confusion? And I don't think that there's a lot of confusion. I think it's just polishing, but I think the question that we're going to start to see interagency, interdepartment, if we keep looking at fine tuning some of these, is what's the right policy? And then we're going to get lost with training on the wrong policy and the wrong updates. So do we foresee any more? I can't believe how bad these flies are. I'm sorry. Do we have any foreseeable future where there's going to be additional changes? Are you looking at other stuff? Wondering, are you still getting comments back? And if that's the case, I think maybe we should pause and make sure we try to do the best we possibly can on this policy, instead of continually update, because I'm worried about continually updating takes away the legitimacy of what we're actually working with. So comment, I don't want to derail what we got going today, but those are some legitimate concerns I have, especially talking to our firearms and use of force instructors, is we just keep changing and we keep adding, and all the changes is a large burden for them, because not all of, I think Jim might have full-time use of force in-house instructors, and our guys are part-time at best. They're trying to do their investigations and their patrol work and sergeant duties, along with try to keep up on all these. So my only question is are we going to continue to keep adding, changing, not adding, fine tuning and refining? So.
Thanks, Kent. That's a really legitimate, good question. I think Eric's back. Eric, I think that's going to be leading up to you to help us with. Did you still see any foreseeable future development?
Well, first off, I think it's, and I totally get what you're saying, Chief. A lot of these policies haven't been touched. They're really old. So I think once we get into more of a regular routine, it'll be a little more predictable. It seems like kind of rapid fire right now. I get it. So I'm hopeful that it's not going to be as burdensome, or there aren't going to be a lot of changes going forward now that we've got all these up to speed. So I don't know if that's a good answer or not. And this does segue. I'll just say it here now, since you brought it up. If the statutes change, or something else pops, and I know we all know this, we could see ourselves suddenly engaged in having to change again or make adjustments. And the reason I bring that up is because right now, actually, I'm following the Senate Gun Violence Prevention Working Group, and I'm about halfway through about 15 letters of interest on 3 different bills that are being proposed, maybe even 4. you know, this is obviously a result of the shootings of the legislators and of course enunciation and everything else that's been going on. So I was going to bring it up to this group in that, for example, the ERPO procedure, extreme risk protection order procedure that we completed, I think it was last session or just before. There wasn't a policy required. I would not be shocked to see so far post has been left out of everything that's going on. It's mostly about assault weapon bans and high capacity magazines, but I would not be shocked to see either some addressing of the especially the emergency risk protection order bit where we might have to do a policy. I don't think use of force, but it's pretty clear that there's a whole bunch of interest out there in that topic. So yeah, I'm going on because I incorporated this other issue, but I think as far as policy goes, now that we got them updated, we should be good, absent, you know, big statutory changes or something coming out as a result of things that are happening out there. So I hope that answers your question.
Great, thanks, Director, for clarifying that. Any other questions, concerns, or discussion points?
I got a quick question with the deadly force and the great bodily harm. So they took that out because it's not in the statute or it's not in the model policy, or was confused on that.
Yeah, so great bodily harm itself as a definition or like a key term is not used in this model policy. It never appears. And that was
Does it
in the old,
Okay, because I'm just seeing, I'm looking on page 68 where it says to protect the peace officer or another from death or great bodily harm. Page
oh, okay.
68. So it is in there.
Okay, well then disregard what I said. I missed it. Good catch.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't like reading that wrong. I was like, well, it's right there. So does that need to be in there then? Or so that they've got a definition of what great bodily harm is or not?
Yeah, then I would say we leave it as is. Yep,
Okay.
thank
Yeah,
you.
caught something.
Good job, Jennifer.
Good job, Jen.
Hey, sometimes I have my moments.
All right, so with that, Alicia, if you can reinsert that, and then for procedure wise, do we need we can just kind of approve it with that change of the great bodily harm definition?
It's in there now, so you can just then approve this as is, if that's what the group would like to do. Because
Okay.
as is, it's in there.
Okay,
So,
got it. Okay, so with that, thanks for the clarity. Jennifer, you comfortable enough to make a motion then?
Yeah, as long as it stays in there. I was gonna say if we got it in the thing, I would rather it stay in there. So I'll make a motion as long as great bodily harm stays in there.
All right, good job. Anyone, second, if I can get?
Second from Kent.
Thank you, Chief. All in favor, say aye.
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 Right?
Great. Thank you, guys, unanimously, thank you. Now, I think that's all we got, unless there's anything for the good of the order. If not, I think, thank you everyone for your time, today to make sure that we get this done and over with so we can pass it over to the full board and implement it.
yes, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for all
Alicia.
your hard work. I know it's a lot of work, so.
Okay, bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Alicia.
Thank you, Jim.
We're gonna arm wrestle you on some other stuff,
I did too.
so we're good.
Especially, I was sweating a little bit with the